Hey guys, welcome to From the Cockpit. I'm Sean and I will be your chauffeur today. And we are driving a 2018 Polaris Slingshot SLR LE. That's right, I said driving because this week we're taking the whole cockpit thing super literally. So the first question everyone wants to know is a Slingshot a car or is it a bike? And the answer is that it's neither, to be honest. You don't buy one of these because you want a car that is also open wheel, or you don't buy it for sure because you want a bike that is like more stable. It just doesn't, it's its own level, it's its own brand of weird. Technically, Polaris classifies the Slingshot as an autocycle, which sounds a little funny, but it actually really works to their advantage. The thing is that as an autocycle, it's not subject to the same crash requirements that the cars are that are on our public roads, but you also don't need a motorcycle endorsement on your driver's license in order to drive one. As you can see, steering wheel, pedals, stick, it's a car from the inside. So, autocycle it is. It won't crash as well as your Miata or your Volvo or my Tacoma, but like I said, the driving experience is that of a car. The Slingshot is its own version of weird. They say that a good car or bike makes really fast speeds feel slow. It makes it feel more in control. The Slingshot's the opposite of that. It makes slow speeds, 40, 50, feel fast. Well, that does mean that your performance drivers aren't going to want one of these. This isn't going to replace your track car. What it does mean is that makes you, me, and anybody else, most people who buy one, feel like a superhero behind the wheel. It is amazing at just having fun. The Slingshot uses a 2.4-liter GM Ecotec engine that's found in the Chevy Cobalt and the Chevy Malibu and the Saturn Ion. It's a car engine. It makes about 175 horsepower and 166 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that might not sound like a lot of power, but for a thing that's only 1,700 pounds, it actually isn't that bad. Also keep in mind, the Slingshot is about 77 inches wide and 150 inches long, which means it's as wide as a Lamborghini. It's about as short as a Mini Cooper, and it weighs less than a smart car. Also add in the fact that you're about 5 or 6 inches off the ground and the center of gravity is real low. That makes 175 horsepower feel like a whole lot more. Then there's the rubber, which, as you've probably noticed, there are only 3 pieces of. I mean, that's sort of the whole point. I remember one of the first people I took for a ride was my chiropractor, who rides Harleys and love bikes. And he said, well, if only one piece of rubber back there, doesn't that make traction really hard? And I was like, yeah, dude, that's the point. So the Slingshot comes with power steering, ABS, and traction control, but obviously that could be turned off. We'll get to that part in a sec, though. The steering is actually one of the biggest improvements I've noticed driving the 2018 versus the last model I drove, which was the 2015. In the older model, I noticed that it was really hard to track. It took a lot of effort to move the steering wheel. You really had to use your arm strength. And then it was difficult to keep the Slingshot to track in a straight line. If you're driving on the freeway or something, it really took a lot of attention and effort as it kept wanting to go off in different directions. You really kept having to micro-correct to keep it in a straight line. And with the 2018, that's all completely different. It still isn't quite as smooth and easy as a normal car, but the power steering is much better, takes much less effort, and the Slingshot tracks far better. I was actually so impressed with the steering that I reached out to Polaris' engineers and I asked them what was different. They said that the components are actually the same, but they recalibrated it by tightening the tolerances so that the steering would feel better, and also, more importantly, so that it would return to center better, which is why I was having so much problem tracking. And the difference is it's a massive improvement. My other big complaint with the first one was the brakes. It took so much leg effort to get the thing to stop, and you always sort of felt like you were about to run into the thing in front of you. It's always had ABS, but I mean, maybe this is just my pencil legs, or maybe they've gotten that much stronger, but the brake feel is so much better. I remember after driving the first one, I got back into my truck, and everywhere I went, it was jerking myself to a stop because I was used to using the brakes like a light switch. It was either on or off. There's no modulation. With the new brakes in the system, or at least the way that they've recalibrated those brakes, given them new feel, they've used different rotors and pads. You have a lot more feel and a lot more stopping power, where I've only really thought I was going to run into somebody like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 times. So finally, we have the traction control. And I'm actually a massive fan of the traction control. Yeah, a lot of the fun with this thing is with that off. But the traction control with it on allows for 20% slip, which means that it's about, we'll call it the perfect amount, given my scientific calculations, to allow you to drift around corners from stops with just enough to help so that the back end can help you initiate a turn. It helps get the nose of the slingshot pointed in the right direction, but it doesn't say like send you into traffic or off a cliff or all the things that can happen when you're doing too much sliding. When we first were driving these, we were driving through Malibu, some really, really tight, windy roads, and I was with a couple of car journalists. We were moving at a pretty fast pace, and I was able to, brake really hard coming into a turn to get the back end to sort of step out a little bit, and then get on the gas. And it was amazing to me how I was able to use the rear end to slide, get it going down the straight, and then it would catch back up, but you would find traction again. And as much as I would love to say that that's because I'm just such a fantastic driver, it really is just an incredibly well-calculated traction control system. Very much like the system that we love in the BMW S1000 RR or the R1 or the Aprilia. It really just allows you to use that slip to your advantage without getting in trouble. Now, with the traction control off, the Slingshot handles like a moderately powered, extremely light, low-to-the-ground, three-wheeled vehicle with not a lot of traction at the rear. It spins. It spins, and it spins, and it spins. It spins off the line. It spins in between gears. And it spins in circles. I have lost count of how many circles. It spins in all of the circles. So, the Slingshot is super fun. That doesn't mean it's very practical, though. For one, you're exposed. It gets hot. You can't take very many passengers. You can't store very much stuff. When you stop at a stop sign or a stoplight or in traffic, whoever's next to you is basically 3 inches from your face, and they're most likely staring at you. If it's a warm day out and you get in, the seats, which are weatherproof, are incredibly, incredibly hot. It really is a vehicle for the perfect occasion. So a base model Slingshot S starts at 20 grand. Another 5,500 or so will get you into the SL model, which adds a backup camera, which is insanely useful given the seating position of this thing, and a Rockford Fosgate stereo system, which will let you blare obnoxious music, which, as far as I'm concerned, is mandatory while driving. Another $2,500 on top of that, and you're getting into a Slingshot SLR, which adds their GPS system, a Sparco steering wheel, shifter, and pedal covers, and a bunch of other fancy bits that I have to admit are actually pretty worth it. I've really enjoyed, this one has those as well, and it's been really nice. $2,000 on top of that, and you find yourself sitting behind the wheel of this, which is the Slingshot SLR LE, and that has an MSRP of about $31,000. It has 10-way Bilstein shocks, a premium 200-watt upgraded sound system, turn-by-turn navigation, and then again, all sorts of fancy things like color match seats and a darker windscreen on it, other things that are nice, but maybe not necessarily. And that's a total of about $10,000 over the base one. The biggest improvement outside of the stereo, which obviously I'm a big fan of, are the Bilstein shocks. They really, really improve the handling, especially when you're pushing the Slingshot. All the advantages I was talking about earlier in terms of how it tracks, the ease of steering, kind of driving in a straight line, that's the same across the board. I got a chance to drive the normal S model, and it felt really nice. It isn't until you're really trying to drive really fast in some windy roads, when you're screeching a lot of tires and really pushing the suspension, that those 10-way Bilsteins come in handy. But when you're doing that, they absolutely do. So the biggest thing that people ask me after what is it worth it, or should I buy one? And to that, I don't really know, to be honest. I do feel that the new model is a big update over the last one. It does drive better, it does handle better, it is more comfortable, it does feel safer. But I also don't know if any of that matters as to whether you should buy it. The Slingshot is its own category so much that either you want this brand of driving experience or you don't. I will say that it's more fun than you expect it to be. I've taken 30 or 40 people for a ride in the last 12 days since I've had it. Everyone from, friends, grandparents, to my doctor, to little kids. And everyone has an absolute blast. I've had people drive down from LA to have me take them on a little run through Ortega and down to my taco spot. And it always delivers. It's always a good time. And there's something to be said for that. However, I'm not sure that you need to be, say, selling your car to replace it with a Slingshot or selling your bike to replace it with a Slingshot. At the end of the day, it's really good at doing Slingshot things. And if having something loud and flashy and fun and weird is your sort of thing, there really is no better tool for the job. And if it's not, then you should rent one because it's a whole ton of fun.